my black and white scarf, my black and white scarf, my black and white scarf, my black and white, yeah, it's black and white, we're just black and white, it's my black and white, it's my black and white scarf.
Hello, and you're very welcome to the Town End Podcast. It's Season 6, Episode 5. It's the Late Late Show once again for Dundalk, except this time we're on the right side of it, where Dundalk steal a late goal to salvage a point at Shamrock Rovers. To go through the game tonight, we are joined by Kieran Callan. Kieran, how are you?
I'm absolutely brilliant. Well, if you had told me at 88 minutes, I would have been like, I'm okay. 90 minutes, I'm absolutely fantastic.
Amazing what a goal can do. Kieran, we were chatting off air. We've been on the opposite end of some of these late goals. It's so much better being on this side.
Oh, absolutely. Because like the one thing I was saying to you off air, that I was speaking to a Dundalk fan today, and I said one of the things that maybe Dundalk haven't really done since they've come back into the Premier Division is seeing games out, not being cute enough, just kind of holding in. And I think the two kind of late goals that we've conceded, the penalty against Derry and that late goal last week on Friday night against Strada, it's about seeing games out and maybe just holding on to what you have. But tonight, like, despite the fact you would have been forgiving for this Dundalk side, with the fact that Vinny Leonard got sent off, that, listen, just play it out, don't concede again, roll back to next week. Whereas no, they just went for it and they seized an opportunity, and maybe it's something that we'll see plenty of during the course of the season, that there's going to be late concessions or late goals, and I'm all for it. But it shows a little bit of grit and determination. That's what Con Murphy said in his commentary this evening, that Dundalk may have been lacking in the past couple of years, and that's something that Kieran has instilled in his side. So listen, it's going to be an entertaining season. I know this is my first time on the podcast this year, but there's been a lot of discussion about Dundalk and where they'd end up. And I don't think I don't think they're going to be in the heady heights of maybe fourth or third or anything like that. I think with the way that this side is shaping up, I don't think we're going to be in as much relegation talk as people would have predicted at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at those first three fixtures, we finally got through them, just not in the order we expected. But to, get a point on the road at the current champions, a point on the road to Derry, which everyone is saying is the potential, could they be on? Yeah, could they be the ones? Probably the number one challenger, I suppose that's the right way to put it. Yeah. And then your only home game is against your local rivals in the Louth Derby, which means all form goes out the window. But to come through those three fixtures undefeated is, it's a hell of a statistic.
It's excellent. And, but the thing is that two of those games, realistically should have been 3 points, only for late concessions. And then you've got tonight, which is a completely different thing, where Shamrock Rovers are they've got new players coming in and they're kind of redesigning themselves this season. And Stephen Bradley has said that in his pre-match, that the players that he's brought in, there's something different to what he has had at Shamrock Rovers. So they're going to be kind of an unknown quantity, but I think they still have such of the experience around them that whoever these new players bring in, they're going to bring something new to the table, and it's going to be an exciting Shamrock Rovers side. I think for us to get a point against that is an excellent result. I think Kieran, though, has kind of sent the signals out. I think he has shown that he's been disappointed at the fact that only picking up 2 points in the first two games. That shows the standards that he's expecting of the Dundalk side, expectancy of what's coming at the club. He's expecting that this team is going to be competitive and try to win games. And that's really exciting, because newly promoted teams, and I'm not trying to name anyone in the past, if they had turned around and said they gotten 3 points, yeah, that's great for us, and it's something to build on and stuff, where Kieran's actually lamenting the fact that we're not sitting maybe on 7 points tonight as opposed to 3.
At the end of the game last week, when we finally talked about football, myself and Gally, Gally mentioned that perhaps Kieran might go in and mix this up. We looked at some of the substitutes that were coming on and we wonder, will they feature? Like we seen McDade come in and start. Harvey Warren, obviously, his suspension had finished, so he finally able to take part in the game. Tyreek Wilson and Young Tian then as well. For going to Tallaght, it was brave to make that many changes in the starting lineup, but I think every one of them probably accounted themselves pretty well.
A lot of people would say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think also what he's trying to do is that he's trying to see, he has said it himself, we're not sure who our best 11 is of yet. But the other thing that I think he's trying to do is that he's trying to manage his squad at the moment, because there's such a quick turnaround of games. They're back on the road again on Friday, and then they've got, if I'm not mistaken, quite a journey over to Galway. So, we've only had one home game so far, and that's quite difficult because there's a lot of travel involved, and there's, as I just said there's a lot of quick turnaround in games. I think he knew that he had to make changes in order to try and, how do I say this, manage the squad, ensure that there's not an early influx of injuries, and that's good management. That's good management. But he was able to instill the trust in the players that he put into the starting lineup, that he knew they were going to do a job. But I don't think any of them looked out of place. So I think it was a smart move. But Shamrock Rovers made a heap of changes as well to their squad.
That's the thing of a Monday night game. This is what happens as well, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like Monday, because you're talking about a team that played on a Friday. They then have recovery on a Saturday, possibly, a light training session, and then you're going into a game once again. Like you don't have a lot of time to instill a system or anything like that. So I think he had to put his trust in the players, as did Stephen Bradley. They had a very competitive game on Friday night against St. Patrick's Athletic. So, all in all, Kieran, I think, he's done a clever thing, because those players that he brought on all of a sudden became, like Rob Cornwall and Danny Mullen, they became impact subs this evening. They really showed their mettle, but it showed as well, like, it's, this Dundalk side, one of the questions would have been, is there a strength in depth? I think they're starting to show that there is. There's a good blend of youth and experience. He does have a very good squad, so I think all in all, it was a smart move. But that's what you have to do with these Monday night games.
Yeah, and it's probably because it's so early in the season as well, Kieran. There's probably that element of, players wanting to put down a marker to be in consideration. I mean, Bobby Burns didn't do a thing wrong, yet he's taken out, but then, gets a chance to get back in on the pitch tonight then again. Like, so I think there's definitely an element of, I need to see these players from Kieran Clough tonight. I need to see, like Harvey Warren during pre-season looked like one of our strongest central defenders. And then due to his suspension, he kind of went out of all our thoughts somewhat. Yeah. When we're thinking it's Finney, it's Cornwall, it's Maiwa, that's our back. And then you probably got Chief as well, who filled in last year in one of those centre back positions as well.
I forgot about him.
Can cover right and can cover in the centre, and really acquitted himself last year when that was asked of him. But look at Harvey Warren, really strong game there tonight, and you think you're taking that experience of Rob Cornwall out. I know he comes back in and plays a key moment in this game tonight. But it's another player just stuck up their hand to say, yeah, absolutely. Tyreek Wilson, another player. I think stuck up the hand and said, I want to be included in this. I'm not here just to make up numbers. So it's going to give Kieran and Ken a real a headache for selection at the weekend. But it's brilliant to see that competition throughout. And like you say, when you've got these Friday games, when you do need to rotate, it's good that the level and the quality of player that comes in is quite high.
Absolutely, and the one thing that, it was something you just mentioned, Tyreek Wilson there, like the send-off that he got from Shells wasn't the kind of the usual complimentary that you would get. We wish them all the best. Like the fact that, the chief executive officer, I think Luke Byrne, came out and actually did a full, listen, you don't understand the kind of player that he's been behind the background, and we wish him all the best going to Dundalk. His last game for Shells was against Crystal Palace in the Tallaght Stadium. Talk about a send off. But that's the caliber of player that we've brought in this year, and the fact that we were able to attract a player of that caliber speaks volume about Kieran Kilduff and what he's trying to build here at Dundalk. And I actually read an article by Dan McDonnell prior to this. Now I'm paraphrasing an awful lot, but he has said that the signings that have been made during the course of the pre-season and kind of the messaging that's been sent out by Dundalk, both on and off the pitch, it seems that there's a lot of stability, but there seems to be that there's, this kind of resurgence that, this tonight and, these games that now follow could be the kind of the signal of a resurgence of this side that, we were so used to having during the, the 2010s. So, but when you're talking about the squad depth, like there is players who have to come back into the squad. I don't think Kieran knows the strongest 11 yet. And that's really good for us because we're going to hopefully see in games like against St. Patrick's Athletic and Galway that you're going to see that there is going to be changes to the team. But if they're all akin and used to the system, then he's going to have to deploy certain players for certain games, and that's going to be great for Dundalk because it shows we have options. Because for a couple of years we just had our 11, and it was very rigid that we kind of knew what our starting 11 was going to be. Now, while I'm not being disrespectful to the players that were maybe on the bench, or between 12 to 14 or whatever, but if we had any kind of spate of injuries, we were in serious bother. There was people filling in positions and people playing out of positions, and that led to weaknesses and chinks in the armor. Where in this instance, you've got players coming in maybe like for like, and like Bobby Burns did absolutely nothing wrong, yet is replaced this evening. It shows that he's going to have to sit there and go, oh well, I'm going to have to really fight for my place this year. And maybe that competition is hungry. Maybe that competition is needed at a club like Dundalk.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to scrap for every single point. We're going to have to fight for everyone. So maybe you need that kind of mentality within. I watched a film recently, and it was a basketball film. The coach was saying you had to play with a chip in your shoulder. Maybe we have to do that this year.
I think that's something that Kieran nearly instills on them is, if you look at a lot of players that he's brought in, some of these are players with maybe something to prove. Maybe they didn't get the game time elsewhere they should have.
Keith Buckley.
Yeah, Conor Cairns,
example.
Danny Mullen. These players are all players that should be probably still with their clubs and playing. Danny Mullen probably didn't do a thing wrong in Derry, and yet somehow found himself out the door. So like there's a redemption arc there for a lot of these players. And you think you feel that Kieran and Ken have identified these players that are hungry, have something to prove, and therefore he's building a team around this kind of siege mentality, them versus us. People think we're going to be, relegated. We're, the lowest odds in the league to pull off anything here. And he's going to use that then as energy and everything else to, stick it back to everyone else. And as we see there tonight, we can be, a man down and whatever else and still pull something out of a result, even though that's in Tallaght. It just goes to show you, if you create that mentality, it can breed throughout that team. And I think that's the caliber of player that both Kieran and Ken have identified to bring in this year. And we're starting to see that come through.
But also it's akin to what Kieran is used to. It's what he has brought. He was brought up, he was at an environment at Shamrock Rovers where when under Michael O'Neill, they shouldn't have been nowhere near the Europa League group stages, but yet there they were, and they were playing against, if I'm not mistaken, a Tottenham Hotspur side that they scored against very early in the game. He was wanted by Stephen Kenny, I don't know how many times before he finally signed for them. But he was around that environment, which had the likes of Patrick Hoban, Stephen O'Donnell, Kassoff, who had been like, Stephen O'Donnell was on his way to play for Merview and was going to be paid 50 quid a week and fuel vouchers. Like that's where he was on his way. Like, and all of a sudden he ends up at Dundalk. I think that culture and an environment that Kieran was around before, I think he realizes that is a formula to bringing something special back to Oriel Park, and it resonates with the fans, it resonates with the community, resonates with the town. It's kind of us against the world, and we're very proud and we stick our chest out and one thing and another. But Kieran gets it, and Kieran understands. But that's why he's brought in particular players, because he knows that if he can instill that mentality and that culture into them, that they'll bring it out onto the pitch. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it, because I think after what's happened over the past number of years, we need to kind of instill a little bit of pride back into the place. And I think we've been kind of the punching bag for a lot of people over the past number of years. And I think it's about time that we just we restore a little bit of pride. But Kieran was the first step in a very long kind of road. And he would say it himself, it was a gamble bringing him in. He'd never managed in the men's game. His management was with Athlone Ladies, and he did an incredible job there. So I think, but he understood the club. I think it's one of his most special times, whereas at Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk, so he knew what he had to bring to the club in order to bring it back.
Kieran, let's look back on the game then. It's a Monday night, always has a weird kind of vibe to it. We kind of settled down into the game, seemed to be going okay. Couple of warning signs before the Shamrock Rovers goal came along, and that was from corner kicks and free kicks. The movement of both Grace and Lopez, they seem to be blocking and allowing one or the other to move pending on the set play. Lopez had that header that just looped wide just before he did get his goal. That should have been a wake-up call for us.
Yeah, but I think Shamrock Rovers are so, how do I say this? They're so in tune with what they're doing now, because they've been playing so many, they just know exactly what they have to do now at this stage in order to break down maybe a low block, which Dundalk had at the time. I think, the concession of the goal, it was very much a set piece that they've probably worked on time and time and time again, and they just knew that if they got the right connection from Lopez, was going to loop over Conor Cairns. Conor couldn't do anything about the goal. It was just a very, very well taken header. It was excellent. But Shamrock Rovers are, very cute at doing that. And they're very cute at getting a goal from a set piece, or just breaking you down through the wide areas, kind of stretching you a little bit thin, and then just kind of hitting you. It was, the warning signs were there, and I'm not going to say that I wasn't surprised, but I felt that the reaction from Dundalk following that was very good. I'm going to say, Jack Byrne, probably the best thing he did was go to Dubai. I think he's come back refreshed and energized. I think his relationship is repaired with Stephen Bradley. He was very, very good tonight. He was pulling the strings. Trevor Clark has looked like a new player as well, because there was talk of him leaving, and I think he's just gotten a new lease of life as well. There's kind of lads who have maybe got their kind of, as they would say, they got their fright. They thought, oh, geez, there's the exit door. I know I'm going to really have to, compete and fight to keep myself within, never mind within the club, but within the team as well. Yeah. So I think there's players who maybe have gotten their wake-up calls, and it's been the best thing for them. But the concession of the goal, and then Shamrock Rovers looked like they just kind of were going to, continue. And then I just, Dundalk got a shot from Darrell Horgan just before half-time, and I went, oh no, there's a bit of spark in us yet. And I think that was probably the little bit of impetus and the little bit of inspiration we needed to kick on for the second half.
I think from a defensive point of view, for their goal, I think probably Ed Irvin might be a little disappointed in himself. He seemed to be with Lopez, but the way they use blockers, suddenly at the front, there's 2-3 players. A sees Lopez pull away to the front. I think he assumes one of the other players who are looking at the Shamrock Rovers defenders who are in an attacking stance at that time. I think he thinks one of them might peel off and he'll just join the pack there. But unfortunately, Lopez just sneaks in front of everybody and glances the header. It's a free header. It's very, very well worked. Like Con said in commentary, it's definitely something worked in the training ground, and it comes off so well. But you can see it's well drilled. The occupation of the space just before where Pico Lopez is about to run into, that's the key part. Because then when Pico runs off, everyone's looking at the grappling and everything else, but no one's watching Pico's run. And he goes the long way around as well, to the ball, and it's a super move. Unless unless A knew that he, that move was going to happen, there's no way he can actually get around there because there's too many players between Pico and him to challenge for that ball. So it's a very, very well worked free kick. And like I say, it's something that probably with their European experience, you can see that really come down to, because
sorry to interrupt. It's just a mark of a very good side and a very well coached side, and a side that's very comfortable and knows their role and knows the position. We have to remember there's been yet again a massive overhaul of players at Dundalk, and we're only 3 games into the season. I think it would be very how to say, misgiving of us to be overly harsh on the situation. You know what I mean? We just conceded what was a very good goal, a goal that they've probably practiced and know their roles. But Pico Lopez, I think James Rogers put in, I might be wrong on the number, I think it's his 6th goal that he has scored against Dundalk. And a lot of but he's very good at set pieces, and we have seen that in the past, and he's just an excellent header of the ball. So I mean, that's definitely something that they've worked on, and I just thought the delivery and the goal was absolutely excellent.
Yeah, and just like on Colin Mullen's point there, he's right. Dervin does let him go, but I think the problem is that if he follows them to, like he says there, to maybe A can put him off. It's the fact that there's so many people in the way for A would have been behind him, and it could have been tugging on jerseys again, and we've been there and we've done that.
We've done that this year.
Yeah, I think, I was going to say, the only way it works, I think, is for A to somehow try to get in front of Pico and stop that space that he runs into. But there does seem to be a small, like we've seen a Derry concession from a corner kick. We've seen Michael Noonan with a header just before halftime as well. It's clearly something we're going to have to work on a little bit. Maybe whether it's the quality of delivery or just the quality of players from the first division to the Premier Division that we're seeing on this, it's causing us 1 or 2 issues. It's definitely an area that we can tighten up as a football team. But the fact that we got in at halftime and sometimes not playing the greatest, only 1 goal down, kind of set up what we've seen in that second half then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we came out with a kind of renewed impetus, and I think Kieran, whatever he said at the team talk at halftime, it clearly showed there was a bit of drive, there was a bit more kind of bravery amongst them. And I think probably what would have happened there was that they would have assessed the situation, they would have seen, right, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong? But then I think they kind of went out with a game plan of, right, I think we need to kind of be a little bit more attacking. I think we need to be a more, what I noticed was that they kind of pulled out to the wide areas an awful lot more. They tried to stretch that Shamrock Rovers back line, which I think worked out really, really well, because we got an awful lot of we got a lot of service down, particularly down the right, but we were getting a lot of more deliveries into the area, and that led to Gemi Arubi's golden opportunity. And I think there was also an opportunity just before we equalised, where the ball came into the area and it was just hooked over the ball, like it could have went anywhere. And it went and hit the top of the net. But like, that shows you that, if we are going to, we can deliver from wide areas, and we do have that kind of potency where we've got players who can deliver in a good set piece ball. So that was probably something that maybe he asked more out of his wide players particularly for the second half, that we can get at these guys instead of trying to push through the middle on a consistent basis. Where Shamrock Rovers come in, they were tight, and they were able to kind of, use a block in order to stop our run at the first phase. If we went out wide, then we were able to get a secondary and third ball into the air, from the area. So I think that's something that maybe Ken and Kieran, identified pretty much in the first half, that we weren't attacking out wide as much as we should have, and I think it reaped rewards a little bit in the second half.
Yeah, you mentioned Arubi's chance in that second. I still don't know how that didn't go in. It's a brilliant ball out. Tien goes out, kind of hangs out wide, and finds enough space to bring in McDade. Brings in a great ball across. Initial header, is blocked with grace. It seems to bounce down in front of him. You think he's just going to lace this one straight in. I still don't know how it doesn't go in. Ed McGinty came straight out to congratulate Lopez after, which I only assume he's done something. Yeah. He's just stood there and been hit by the ball or something. But I just couldn't believe it didn't go in.
I was, you know, the edge of the seat kind of moment. You're kind of sitting there, and then you have to sit back down, and you're kind of looking around, making you look stupid. But at the same time, I wouldn't fault Gemi. It was a snapshot kind of reaction that he had to make, and maybe he just didn't have time to that little bit of composure that he needed. But maybe it was a case that Lopez just did enough to put him off. And it was just, make him put him off balance or anything like that. It could have been just the smallest of things, a wee nudge or one thing to knock Gemi off, and that's what caused him to put the ball wide. But like a glorious opportunity, something that you think that you're going to be kind of ruining. Was that our chance? And look, I think Gemi's going to have plenty more of opportunities before the end of the season. I think he's going to score plenty of goals.
Yeah, I actually was just about to bring this up, Colin. You must be able to see my notes or something, because after that chance, we've seen a few substitutes starting to come in. Groom and Arubi came off, Buckley and Mullen came on. We waxed lyrical on Friday about how Danny Mullen can lead a line, can hold the ball, can occupy space and defenders. He done a masterclass again this evening on that. It's definitely his strongest thing. I think Gally said he's probably one of the best at leading the line since Pat Hooban has left this club in particular. But he's equally as good. He's equally as good as Pat. That where the ball sticks with him, he's able to bring in others with him and stuff like that as well. Colin's reference there that the substitutes really turned the game tonight, and I think it did that one, and then bringing on Bobby Burns, which freed up Tyreek Wilson to go a little bit further up, and then Owen Kenny outright just seemed to kept occupying space whenever he came on, and that's what you needed at that time in the game in particular. We'll get to the red card in 1 second, but at that time in particular, I think Con might have even mentioned it. Shamrock Rovers were starting to look a little leggy. The lack of games that they've had and that massive time off between their last European game and this and the start of the season for them, which obviously only started on Friday, and now 2 games so quickly, you could just see the little bit of tiredness kicking into some of those players' legs.
Yeah, fatigue is going to be a huge thing for Shamrock Rovers, because they do have, they have the Shelburne match to also come up with, which is, I think, it's been refixed at some stage. But once again, you're talking about players that are making an impact. Like, have we ever had a caliber of a player like Danny Mullen coming off the bench in the past number of years?
No.
We haven't. Or Rob Cornwall, or Owen Kenny, or Harry Grimm. This is what we're talking about: squad depth and rotations at this time of the year. So, Rob Cornwall's experience, Danny Mullen's hold up play, his positioning, and also the fact that he's able to, as you said, bring players also into the game. I don't want to harp back to the Drogheda game too much, but my God, that flick was just absolutely unbelievable for the goal. It was just incredible, but it's just instinct, and that's just what you need. You need an instinctive striker or a forward player like that. But in relation to Owen Kenny, I think this is a big year for him. Yeah, I think he did really, really well last year, but I've just watched him and playing out in that wide right area over the past couple of games, and I just think, wow, this kid really has shown a whole new side to him. And I think that he, once again, an impactful player. He's going to be busy. Players are going to have to mark him. He's not afraid to take, he's not afraid to go head on. I think, he's got a huge year ahead of him, and I think he's going to be a big player for us. But all in all, I think some of the players were just, Danny Mullen, I think is going to be probably the best leading forward man since Pat Hoban, as you said. Yeah, I do agree with that.
It's not too often Gally gets something right, so fair play to him. Yeah. So let's go to the big turning point in the match, which we thought was going to be the nail in the coffin. We were really into the match. We were stretching it. We were, applying pressure when needed. An awkward ball kind of loops up into the air, which means from Vinnie Leonard, which means he has to challenge it a second time. The bounce is horrendous. It sets off Aaron Green to go down and chase. Vinnie knows he's in even from the wide angle behind it, I don't think that covering defender is going to make it over in time from Harvey Warren either. It's the correct decision from the referee, although I didn't agree with any of his other yellow cards before that. But I do believe that was a straight red.
The one disappointment I have is that he had received a yellow, and I thought he was going to give the second yellow preceded by the red.
I think if Harvey Warren is closer,
he gives the yellow. But unfortunately, he's given a straight red, which means that it's an automatic 1-match suspension with a follow probably of 2 more. 3 games. He'd be very disappointed. It's been, Vinny has been excellent for Dundalk, and I think, for such a young age, he has showed such composure and such strength, and he's been excellent for Dundalk. So this is a disappointment, but you could see even in his reaction, he wasn't exactly very visceral in his protest, and I think he kind of knew. Did he get the job done? Yes. Okay.
It's the take one for the team moment.
It's a lesson. Yeah, it's a lesson, but at the same time, it's no sacrifice, no victory, so to speak.
Yeah, Frank, I think he got a straight red, and
straight
to the back pocket for that. So.
Yeah, went straight for the back pocket.
Could you appeal it? You could. It'd be a waste of your money, because by any letter of the law, it's a definite red card, and because he was handed the red card, that's a 3-match ban, unfortunately, for him. So, that's a disappointing side to it. But if he doesn't do that, Aaron Green's in on goal, and we yes. So look, he did what he did, I would say in the least selfish way. He's done it for the team and for the rest of the lads who will be out in the pitch thereafter. What really worried me was straight after that substitution, there was a couple of substitutions from Shamrock Rovers, Brennan coming in, Victor Ravashuna, all these players came in then, and I'm like, oh God, suddenly the pitch seemed huge. Yeah. That's what had me so worried that, any other pitch bar Tallaght, it's so big. I don't know how young Sean Brennan didn't actually score. 2 great saves from Conor Cairns at the death there as well. These things ended up being key, for us.
Oh, absolutely.
You think you take the red card when it happens, it is what it is. And then Conor pulls off two great saves to keep us in the game, to set up the grandstand finish.
You would have been very forgiving if Dundalk had just said, right, just 2 banks of 4, sit in, let them throw the kitchen sink at us, and just get out of here with a 1-0 loss, and cutter. But that doesn't seem to be the kind of mentality of this side. And the grandstand finish came with, in the 90th minute. We're at the good end of the receiving of a goal, which is like, I just saw it kind of bobbling it. I just saw it kind of hit the back of the net. I don't think anybody knows who actually got the punch to it. Because at one stage it's Danny Mullen, the next stage it's Rob Cornwall. At one stage I saw the league, the League of Ireland crediting it Cornwall, and directly underneath was Dundalk's graphic, which had Danny Mullen. So it was just like, who's who here? But it doesn't matter. But at the same time, I think. As I said at the beginning of the program, it's that kind of grit, determination that playing to the whistle goes. That seems to be what we're at now, and it's brilliant. And for us to get a point out of Tallaght 3 games into our Premier Division season is absolutely brilliant. But also being down to 10 men. For us to have the bravery to go and do that is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, as Jason said, with 2 late goals going against us recently, it was third time lucky. Absolutely. And on Colin Mullen's point there, Rob Cornwall gets fouled, wins a free kick, gets booed for it. He did, but I think that was pushing Aaron Green off, which ends up, he gets onto the ball. We knock a long ball out to Owen Kenny, which gets the ball out for a throw in, which ends up leading to the corner. So it'll show how these things happen. It's a dangerous enough ball in by Bobby Burns. It's in on top of the keeper. Ed McGinty looks like he has it. Suddenly he drops it. I think Danny Mullen is falling over the line and hooks it into the net because Rob Cornwall is the other side and is kind of staring at it, hoping it's going to just bounce off him, I think. But you can always tell who runs away first, and Danny Mullins went booting over to the away fans. So I think you could safely say that's Danny's second.
That's Danny's goal.
Yeah, without a doubt. And look, we, like I said, when we opened the show here, we've been on the end of this for 2 games straight. It's lovely to be on the end of this. We're talking about not having a win in the league, but we're talking about coming back late, getting a winner. This was the first time we were behind in a match tonight as well. Now we can come back from that. That's not an issue for us as well. So I think there's a lot to be gained from this. I think looking at some of the match stats and graphics, and I think we had the most chances in the match and stuff like that as well. Sure, we went to Tallaght, we went on the front foot. We got a reward for that. Too many teams have come in, sat in, and end up with nothing out of it. We were fortunate at times. We were unfortunate at times, and sometimes you get your luck and you'll take it all day long. But I think the love affair coming in for Danny Mullins tonight is something like Friday night and again, and I think he's going to prove to be a really key player for us this season. But it's nice to be back in and be relatively competitive in this league. We're not just making up numbers. I think that's one of the nicest things. I'm sure Kieran and Ken would probably kill us for saying, lads, don't be writing us off at times, but it's the fact that we're not just making up numbers. We're going to the Brandywell, we're going to Tallaght, and we're having a game here, and we're getting stuff out of it, which is the key part out of it all. I think is, we're going to these grounds, we are competing. We're probably unlucky not to have more points on the board, but you'd like to think over the course of the year these things will even themselves out, and you will get something from it. But I think that's something who says in a new feature, Kieran, for us this year, we're hoping we will have the post-match thoughts of Kieran Kilduff. So actually here is Kieran's post-match interview at Tallaght Stadium.
Talking pre-match about the 2 games you've played and conceding those late goals and how much they hurt. Much nicer to be on the other side of that coin with the late goal for your team tonight.
Yeah, massively. Felt a lot different, and look, I thought we were very good tonight. I thought I didn't know how I was going to stand in front of that dressing room had we not got something from the game, the amount we put into it. We were brave in the second half. We went after them. We had loads of chances, and obviously you go down to 10 and you're beginning to think might get away from you, but we had to weather a few storms. But we knew if we stayed in it, one chance, and there's character in that dressing room. And we got hurt the last 2 games, but thankfully we did a bit of the hurting this week.
You must be really proud of your players, because right from the off they played really well, but that period in the second half when they dominated especially was really good. Yeah, no, look, we said we were going to attack every game, and I think we did that. I think you could see the honesty out there at the end when you go down to 10, you didn't give up, and just so proud of them that we were able to get something for our showing tonight, because I thought we were excellent for the majority of the night, and against obviously a brilliant team. So it was it was a great reflection for us, I thought, for what we put in. And when Vinny was sent off with about 15-20 minutes to go, did you feel that maybe it's gone at that point?
Look, it was always going to be hard. It obviously just got that little bit harder. But like Vinny was, we trusted the centre halves to go player for player in our press, and that was a risk. Obviously, we're disappointed the way it happened, but I think you could see there we've Rob Cornwall coming in and really putting his body on the line to dig his teammates out, and it's an experienced player coming on for a young player, and it's good for the group to see stuff like that. But obviously, look at that moment going down to 10 away and Tallaght, you think maybe you've had your chances, but look, when you have players like Danny Mullen who can sniff out a goal like that out of nowhere, you've always got a chance.
Yeah, we had a bit of a debate in commentary because there were so many bodies in the box. We weren't sure initially if it was Cornwall, but Danny Mullen, super sub.
He's claiming it anyway.
Yeah. I think it is his goal, all right. Yeah. And a big goal for you.
Yeah, I need a big one there on Friday night against Tallaght as well. So look, that's why we have him at the club, and obviously Bemi scoring big ones up in Derry as well. So we you need a lot of lads chipping in, but I'm delighted for Danny. It's a great weekend's work for him, and I want obviously a big one on Friday night.
Yeah, you bounce into that game now against Pats with a lot of confidence, I'm sure.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of tired bodies. We'll be in again in the morning just to assess everyone. It's 96 hours till the next one, so you don't get much time, and this has obviously come thick and fast. A loud derby, obviously, previously is a huge emotional one as well, so that come down, we were worried about maybe being flat, but we didn't feel like that tonight, so we just can't be flat on Friday either. So we'll do everything right and get ready for a big one.
Well, listen, well done tonight. A really good point for you.
Thanks, Con.
Yep, thank you so much to LOI TV for allowing us to take these post-match interviews as well. Kieran, interesting there, he talked about the flatness that may have been with that team on Friday night, the concession of the late equaliser, and now the elation that's in the dressing room right now. That's so important to carry into the Pats match now on Friday.
Yeah, something that somebody mentioned just in one of the comments now. It was a tongue-in-cheek saying, the invincible season. But the thing is that this team is still unbeaten. And that is a characteristic that they're bringing into their fourth game of the season. And whether you like it or not, St. Patrick's Athletic have lost a game this year, and Dundalk haven't. So that's a kind of a characteristic, and they'll be going into it now. Obviously, he's talking about assessments, and pardon me, there's they have to the 96 hours he's talking about of a turnaround before they go back into their next game, and they have to prepare for that. Kieran is not making any excuses for anything. He knows that, they've left points kind of behind them and stuff like that. But he'd be looking at, how St. Patrick's Athletic set up, obviously against his old mentor, Stephen Kenny, and things like that. There's a bit of a side story to it. He, I think, will be aiming that they'll show the kind of the same grit and character. He keeps talking about character, and that's exactly what this side has in abundance. And he'll be talking about that. So hopefully that is something that they can bring into the side now on Friday night against St. Pat's and maybe get a result.
In a way, was this result one of those perfect away performances that, although the home team dominates the start, they don't take their chances. They took one, but not as many as they created tonight. As Keith Simon said there, superb, dominant second half display from ourselves. Yeah. So we showed that, we can get teams on the rope, even if it is on the road, we can put it to the champions. We can play against them. And if you don't take your chances against us, we look for that one little moment, a little chink in your armor or whatever it is, and we can pull a result out from there. And that's got to be just bouncing now going into to Richmond.
But I think the one thing that I saw from this side last year, and I think it was something that Kieran obviously instilled in them, that they weren't to play without fear. Like, there was no fear in that side last year. I think he's kind of brought that in as well this year. You know what I mean? So, just in the door, lads. Didn't even
Gally's in.
Oh, Gally, very
Gally's in from a long day's work. Gally, turns out you were right in everything you said about Friday, don't worry.
Yeah, but like in relation, just in relation to what I'm saying, there's no fear in who they're going to play and how they're going to play. So I think that's something that, like, even I refer back to one of the games they played last year against the Premier Division side was in the FAI Cup against Shamrock Rovers. Now, we were very unlucky to be knocked out that night, but we didn't look out of place even with that first division side, because that side was set up to go take on more superior teams on the front foot and play without fear. And that's exactly what they're doing. But they're doing it with better players this year. And now we're reaping the rewards of it, because we're taking the lead against, Derry City twice. We've taken the lead in Allowed Derby with a very, I just called it a magic goal, it was. But like, we've also not laid down at the home of the champions after going down to 10 players. Like, there's something about this side that I think can only get better. And I think that is exactly what Kieran spoke about. It's the people in the dressing room. It's the people he has around the club. It's characters. And but it's characteristics of the kind of player that you want at this football club. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that any of the players that have left in the past couple of years, they weren't professional, they didn't, or anything like that. But I think it just takes a particular type of personality to come into a team like this Dundalk side, where
it's probably an evolution of this team, though, Kieran. Is it?
Pardon? It's
probably like an evolution of this team from last year to where we are now, sort of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's. I hate using it. It's a 2.0, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's a second version. So it's definitely. But you could see that, like, Jurgen Klopp did the same. Between his first to his third year at Liverpool, where he slowly changed not only the mentality but how they played. They went from this kind of pragmatic side to this, what he liked to call, the rock and roll team. This kind of very kind of gung ho kind of side that that were constantly running and charging and on the front foot. I'm not saying in any way, shape or form that we're playing like Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, but what I am saying is that there is an evolution and a change, and it's got to do with the type of player that he's brought in this year. And I do believe that when we get into the heaty days of July and August, when, you know, big decisions and big games are decided, you're going to be relying on the likes of Keith Buckley and Rob Cornwall and Danny Mullen, and then you've got Demi Arubi, who's full of confidence at the moment, and the likes of Owen Kenny, who has, I know he was born and raised in Buncrana, but he's one of us now. Like, he knows what it means for this, you know. So I think Frank's right. We really shouldn't fear anyone, because you know, like, there's teams out there that are there for the taking, and I firmly believe that, you know, Dundalk aren't going to be the ones that are going to lie down in front of side just because they've played in the Premier Division for a couple of years.
Yeah, and you know, like, absolutely, we shouldn't fear anybody. I think we're just missing that last little piece of the jigsaw, which is a victory, to really kick on how this whole thing has gone. You know, Rory Gilson just in there, and he's right. There was a superb spirit shown, and same with quality, I think, as well, for to hang into that game when it was unlucky to win it. Possibly, we had chances. I do think just the timing of that equaliser was perfect, because, like I said, I was worried about the substitutions and Brendan that coming in there, yeah, I presume, yeah, the two Wilson brothers were outstanding. Yeah, really, really good. Interesting just seeing them playing on different flanks, but they were excellent. And I just think bringing in Bobby Burns at that time was the right move then as well. And I would definitely agree with his second point that, you know, our manager, you know, is absolutely, he knows how to get the best out of some of these players, and his substitutes seem to be right. We've seen this last year and turning games 3-2 substitutes at a time. I didn't know if that was going to be able to come into the Premier Division. I didn't know if that allows you to do, you know, the way we manage games and we're able to turn games and have players to come in and have it. But I suppose that's the modern football, where you have finishers to come in, and depending on how they've set up the team, you expect, like, you know, to be still in that game and be able to unleash Danny Mullen. When we did, that was obviously part of a game plan. And when he knew the two centre backs were going to be tired, which meant Bemi Arubi had to just keep running to tire them players out in probably the first 2/3 of the match, to give Danny Mullen a chance when he came in. He's got the fresher legs compared to the two centre halves, and that's exactly what ended up playing out. And Danny's on the line to toe Poco, and I'm still giving it to him, and the gaffer's giving it to him as well. Look, Kieran, we've probably done enough on this game. We could probably keep going for another 2 hours, mind you, because it's to get late. Equalisers is a joy to behold, and we're not being on the other end of it. I think you're right. It sets us up nicely for the trip to Richmond Park now on Friday. Hopefully a bit more confidence into the lads that we can now go and just get this victory. I think that's the key thing from the next couple of fixtures here. If you can keep the unbeaten run going, brilliant. But we do need to just pick up that win and show that we can turn these good performances into the 3 points. I think that's key to, we talk about an evolution of this team, but to show that hunger and that little extra drive to go and get a win. That's what we need to see from this team. But I think we've seen a team tonight that shows they can stay in games, that has many different ways to play. Show we've got a really good bench. We've probably seen that over the last couple of games in Derry and here in particular, that we have an impact from the bench, and from our substitutes come in, can do that. We had a Ruby come off the bench up in the Brandywell, made a difference. Danny Mullen tonight. So I think we show we've strength and depth as well. We just need to get those 3 points next, and hopefully we'll be on the way.
And Richmond Park is a happy hunting ground for Dundalk. In recent years, it's been, you know, we've had some very, very big, you know, we've had big results up there, and we've had some very positive results. And even going back to the last game of the season last year, we played them in the Leinster Senior Cup. I love this Leinster Senior Cup, great competition. But like we played really well that night. You know what I mean? Like, and Kieran had made some big changes, and Brian Garkin was actually in charge of that team, and Stephen was up in the stands, like, and it was, it has been a happy kind of place that Dundalk have had no fear going to in the past number of years. So yeah, all in all, I think we'll be very positive going into it. There's a pep and a step. We've gotten a result. I think, Kieran has sent out the right messages so far. He said, one of the things he said, like, I don't know how I was going to speak to those lads if we hadn't gotten something out of it. That shows, the hunger and the desire that he has, that he wants to kick these players on even further. So I think it tees up a very competitive and interesting game now on Friday night in Richmond Park.
Yep. Look, and we'll be here to do it all again. Hopefully another roller coaster from this Dundalk team. Well, look, thanks everyone for jumping in tonight. Sometimes on a Monday night, the show could be quiet enough. But look, lads, thank you so much for all the comments and everything in tonight, all the views and everything. It's always deeply appreciated. Thank you, Kieran, for your debut this year. Long running, been in every single season of the 6 seasons as well. So good to keep that run going also. And as I said, thanks to everyone else. We'll be back with our usual man of the match competition and that on Friday. So until then, come on to town.
My black and white scarf, my black and white scarf, my black and white scarf, my black and white, yeah, it's black and white, we're just black and white, it's my black and white, it's my black and white.